where we encourage all presenters and attendees to take advantage of the opportunity to speak, listen, and understand. If you haven't already, and Dylan already mentioned this, please make sure you swipe your Grizz card. Also, please watch for an email survey that we will give you. It'll give you the opportunity to offer feedback and help us continually improve our event each year. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered to win a Diverse You sweatshirt. So this is Teresa Heuerman and Cassie Sheets with the Poverello Center, and there's also a full panel of speakers today. The Poverello Center, an award-winning 501c3 organization, advocates for and provides a multitude of services to address and improve the health, well-being, and stability of the homeless and underserved within Missoula. The Poverello Center operates 3 separate programs addressing the diverse needs of the Missoula community: the Emergency Shelter, and Soup Kitchen, the Homeless Outreach Program, and the Valor House. Tessa Heuerman is the Director of Supportive Services at the Poverello Center and will be facilitating the student panel discussion. Also, this is being filmed by MCAT, so by being here, you're consenting that it's okay for you to be on TV. If you do not want to be filmed, then I would encourage you to attend the different session. So if you don't want to be part of that, then you can leave and attend the different session right now. Okay.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you to the University of Montana for this opportunity to be part of Diverse U. We're really honored to be here and talk about not just the Poverello Center, but specifically the service learning class that we facilitate at the POV in conjunction and collaboration with the Department of Sociology and specifically the Professor Daisy Rooks. So like Heather said, the Poverello Center is an emergency shelter where we serve individuals, adults who are homeless. We can serve both men and women at our facility. We have dormitory-style sleeping quarters and showers, laundry. People can get their mail with us. They can make phone calls. They can connect with sack lunches if they have to go to work and they need a meal while they're at work. We have those kinds of services available to everybody in the community and that are adult individuals. We also have a food pantry that serves anyone who comes to ask for food. There are some qualifications for that, but it's pretty easy to access food at our food pantry. And we have a soup kitchen where residents and other members of the community can come and have a meal 3 days a week, or 3 meals a day, every day of the week. Heather mentioned that we had the Homeless Outreach Team, which is a program of doing street outreach, connecting with community members who are homeless, living on the streets or in encampments. And it's an opportunity for us to let them know about resources that are available to them and to hand out some supportive supplies like hand warmers, sack lunches, water, that kind of thing. But mostly, the Homeless Outreach Team focuses on building relationships with people who are homeless and living on the streets so that we can connect with them in ways that are not threatening. It doesn't really require much of them, and they can start to understand that there are people who really care to help them and think about possibilities for creating some change in their life. We have the Valor House, which is a transitional housing program for veterans who are homeless. We operate that housing program in conjunction with the Missoula Housing Authority, and veterans can stay there up to 2 years. They pay 30% of their income towards their rent, so it's affordable housing, and they get supportive services with that as well. Services like transportation, case management services, meal support with some food that we bring in from our food rescue program, and other things like that. So veterans are also able to transition in independent housing in the community after successfully completing the program. Does anybody have any questions about the Poverello that we can clear up right away so that we can kind of start talking about the service learning class? Okay. So the service learning class is a unique creation that we started about 5 years ago. We're going into our 6th semester of conducting the service learning class. And when we first started talking with Daisy and also Celia Winkler in the Department of Sociology, we were talking about our goals and what the collaboration could look like. And we knew that one of our goals that we wanted to reach was that we wanted to help community members to better understand the experience of people who are homeless. That was really important to us, and we were looking at all kinds of ways of doing that in the beginning, but then we started to also talk about how we wanted to establish a sustainable collaboration with the Department of Sociology. That was really important to us because it's great for us to get the message out there one time, but our community changes. We wanted it to be an ongoing process of informing the community members about the Poverello Center and who we serve primarily. So then we also looked for opportunities to deepen our understanding of what the experiences are of the people that we serve at the Poverello Center. As an organization, it's really important for us to know what it's like and what their needs are and the best ways to support them. So we saw an opportunity with our collaboration with the Department of Sociology as a way to achieve that as well. So those were our main 3 goals that we were looking at, and we decided on the service learning class approach to achieving those goals. Daisy had experience teaching using that model, so that was a good opportunity for us to take advantage of that. We also knew that the service learning model, where participants in the class spend up to 3 or 4 hours a week serving our clients in our facility, that would be a good benefit to our clients, obviously. You know, we rely a lot on volunteers, and the students would be acting as volunteers at our organization, and it would be, while temporary, a reliable bank of volunteers for us to use. And then we also knew that evidence shows that service learning classes are really effective in reducing stigma and helping people to truly understand the experiences of others, people who are stigmatized or marginalized. So we knew that that was a way for us to achieve one of our goals. So I think it's important for us to talk, too, about how the service learning class goes about addressing stigma and helping folks to understand the experience of people who are homeless. As I said, students volunteer 3 to 4 hours a week at the facility. They do things like handing out food in the food pantry, going out on the streets with our homeless outreach team, preparing meals or serving meals out of the soup kitchen, working in the staff office. Those kinds of services are what the students engage in on a regular basis. And also, in this class, because of those services that they provide, students have the opportunity to start to form relationships with the people that they're serving at the homeless shelter, at the Poverello Center. And they have repeated contact with them, they get to hear their stories, so it's an opportunity for the students to learn more about the people that we serve. Also, the class has a structure of having students write ethnographic field notes after they do their volunteering sessions. And the ethnographic field notes are an opportunity for students to conduct research and kind of capture what their experience is, but it's also a chance for them to reflect on things that they're noticing that are going on in the emergency shelter, or things that they're noticing about the people that they're maybe serving a meal to or handing food to in the food pantry. So it's an opportunity for them for that reflection to occur. And also students then conduct interviews with some of our clients as another way to conduct research in the service learning class. And so those interviews give them another chance to really explore even further questions that may have come up for them as they're working and providing service and getting to know our clients. And then also in the class, there's a lot of discussion time and activities during actual class time. So students are getting opportunities to hear from each other and reflect on what all the students are learning about and experiencing in their service hours. So overall, the service learning class helps to reduce stigma and promote understanding by really giving people experiences that might contradict misunderstandings that they had before or the myths about people who are homeless. And it deepens their understanding, reduces stereotypes. It helps to replace those stereotypes with genuine information and real-life experiences. There's some other positive things that come out of the service learning class in addition to reducing stigma and helping the students to really have that deeper awareness of the experiences of people who are homeless. Most students after a service learning class choose to continue their service and continue to volunteer at the Poverello Center, maybe doing the exact same thing they were doing during the class and just now doing it on their own free time. And also, some of them choose to take their academic study of homelessness further. Maybe they write a thesis about homelessness or go on to work at organizations, intern, or get hired at organizations that are addressing homelessness in the community. Also, service learning classes help people to feel good about their service. They tell their friends and family members, they talk about it in the community, they become advocates for the Poverello Center, and benefit the people that we serve in that way. And they also change their response to people who are homeless in the community. They may have ignored that problem in the beginning or not had positive ideas about people who are homeless. And so after the class, they ultimately end up changing their behavior, which is really an important part of it. So do you have any questions about how the service learning class functions, what we do in the service learning class? Okay. So I'd like to take some time to do some introductions of our panel members. Now that we've talked about the POV and what we do, yeah. Sure.
So in addition to the students going into the POV and doing their service, are they also meeting as a class to discuss their experiences?
Yes, it's a 3-hour class once a week, and the class actually occurs at the Poverello Center, so they're also in the environment during that time as well. I kind of went out of order on my agenda, so I would like to have the students introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their experience in the service learning class. I don't know if that'll come out of there. We're going to start with Allison.
So my name is Allison Tabasca. I graduated last year with a bachelor's degree in sociology. So I did the service learning class the semester before, and it was probably the most important experience that I did while in college. It really set forth my career in working with homelessness and mental health and substance abuse issues. So, I think that's good. I don't know if that's even working. Can you guys hear? No. Closer we can. There we go. My name is Paige Eli. I graduated in May, and I'm pre-med. I'm applying to medical schools right now, and also majored in sociology with an emphasis in inequality and social justice. And I took the service learning course my sophomore year in the spring, and I think that I was motivated by social justice issues, and I'd seen things abroad and seen poverty abroad. But having a service learning course where you're not just reading out of a book, but that you're actually interacting with people, that for me, I'm from San Diego, and I'd seen homeless people experiencing homelessness in San Diego, but hadn't really thought about it. I didn't have any stereotypes. I just didn't really think about it in depth. And coming to Missoula and seeing, what a great community Missoula is, and then having this service learning course and seeing, wow, there are people experiencing poverty in my own community, and it's not just one type of person, but multiple types of people. And so for me, seeing that poverty does exist in the U.S. and not just seeing homelessness, but that precariousness of poverty. So somebody's working poor and maybe about to fall into poverty. And so right now I'm a AmeriCorps Vista, serving at Missoula Food Bank. And so I've gotten to do a lot more expanding off of what I've learned in the service learning course, and was able to be a preceptor, which is the sociology term for teacher's assistant, for that class as well last year.
My name is Dustin, and I'm a second-year graduate student in the sociology department. I took the service learning class when I was an undergraduate, and it really was the very first time I had been able to do sociology, and also the very first time I was able to be in a setting that you couldn't hide from poverty, essentially. And so to take the class and And to be at the Poverello Center for the class and to volunteer every week was really an eye-opening experience. I think similar to what Paige was talking about, of like knowing that there is poverty and knowing that there is homelessness, but then being in the middle of an emergency homeless shelter and seeing people who are fighting this day to day. It was a very eye-opening experience for me. And the class has informed my research as a sociologist, and it also it has kind of set the tone of what I think will be my future research in terms of poverty and homelessness. And for me personally, particularly with LGBT individuals, I did an undergraduate thesis on LGBT youth and homelessness, and I think that this is an issue that people should be talking about more, and taking the service learning class has given me the power to do that.
My name's Allie Goldberg, and I took the service learning class in the spring of 2013. When I first went into the service learning class, I knew a little bit about homelessness. I had never really seen it or paid attention to it. Walking into the Poverello Center the first time was terrifying, and over the course of the semester, I really got to know clients and really got to know that they don't just fit stereotypes that we have about homeless people. I mean, they have so many stories, and I loved interacting with them. I ended up working at the POB for a little under a year after I got done with the class, and I loved that experience as well, and I'm really thankful that I got to take the class. One of my favorite things is to see a client on the street who recognizes me and comes up to me and says, hey, it makes me feel really good, and I just talk to them. It really opened my eyes to what people are experiencing, because it's hard. And it's something that people either don't know about or just choose to ignore, and I think that the service learning class is really good to help people, to really open people's eyes.
My name is Mike Phelps, and I took the service learning class last spring as a junior. And I didn't really know what to expect from the class, and I think what most impacted me was learning just what organizations in the community are doing to address homelessness. Coming into the class, the image I had in my head of organizations fighting homelessness were primarily those of missions, like religious motivated organizations, and in the course of the class I became very familiar with how the POV works, the different programs it does, as well as other organizations in the community and how they all work together.
Hi, I'm Cassie Sheets. Thanks, Daisy, for everything you do for the class. Bye. I took the course as a graduate student in the sociology department a few years ago, and I loved it, obviously, because now I'm still working for the POV. I was hired on as the volunteer and outreach coordinator the following November after the spring semester, and now I'm the development and community outreach coordinator for the Poverello Center. And yeah, so obviously I owe a lot to the class, and that it's formed a good chunk of my career here in Missoula. But more so than that, I owe a lot to the POV because I'm a member of the community, and it, along with hundreds of organizations in town, really provide a service that is sort of a silent leader sometimes. We don't know the work they do because they're doing it so well and so collaboratively and so passionately. So we're just really excited to share with you guys what we've learned from that student experience.
And I'm really sorry, when I got myself off agenda, we missed an opportunity to speak with Daisy, the teacher, the professor for the class. She has another class to go teach, but really without the Department of Sociology, this class just wouldn't happen. They've been incredible supporters all along. Each class, we have anywhere from 10 to 12 students, so it's not a big class for the department, but they find it to be really meaningful because every year students talk about how it's one of the best classes they've ever taken. And I'm not exaggerating that. Obviously, it wasn't hard for us to recruit quite a sizable panel. So let's go ahead and take some time to ask questions of the panelists. Does anybody have a question they'd like to ask? Yeah.
I can't recall your name in Gallup Beach. You mentioned when you first went there, you mentioned when you first visited the POV that it was terrifying, and that later on you got past that. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Well, when I first walked into the POV, I think the reason it was so terrifying is I had never been in any type of emergency shelter setting or any type of setting like that. It's really a different place to be. If you've never spent time in one, it's really different from what people who have homes experience on a day-to-day basis. When I first walked in, I remember people all over in the hallways, just crammed in there, hanging out and doing normal people stuff, but it was just a really overwhelming, sensory overwhelming experience for me. As I went through the semester, I chose to do my volunteering hours in the staff office. So I got to interact with a ton of people because there's people in and out of the office all day, every day. And doing ethnographic field notes got me to looking at things a little bit differently as well because I had to describe my experiences in so much detail. It took so long every week to do field notes. But I started to really observe and notice, what these people were going through, and everybody had a different story. And most of the people I interacted with were very nice and very real people. And especially when I ended up doing my interviews towards the end of the semester, it was neat because I got to talk to 2 clients who I had observed a lot throughout the semester and interacted with a little, but they agreed to do the interviews with me, and they agreed to share their experiences of homelessness with me, and I talked to them for, an hour each, and I ate dinner with them, and it was very much an eye-opening experience in that I realized that these people who are staying at the Poverello Center, whether they're chronically homeless or not, because not everybody's chronically homeless, it's actually a really small percentage, but they're just like me. They have experiences just like I do. The only difference is that I have a home to go to right now. So that's what made it less terrifying for me, and that's what really made me start to feel empathy and compassion, and it wasn't scary anymore because they were just like me.
Thank you. Other questions for our panelists? Oh, sorry.
So basically everybody of you said like the people were different from how you would stereotype them, and so in what means and what are the actual stereotypes of homeless people, because I've never
I can
That's
take
it.
that question, or if anybody else wants to.
Yeah, who wants to take that question? What are stereotypes maybe that we've heard before, and how are the people at the Poverello different than that? Did I get your question right? Thanks.
A lot.
I want to know what stereotypes you guys think, because I'm sure we're going to say the same exact thing.
Yeah, does anybody have ideas of when you think of someone who's homeless, what are some of the first things that come into your mind?
Well, it goes back to my question that I just asked. Why are we afraid? Why, I mean, I'll admit it, I was a sociology major in college too, and yet there's some piece of me that's still a little bit afraid if I walk by somebody who I assume is homeless on the street, what am I afraid of?
So I think you're bringing up two really good points, that sometimes we're judging based on appearance that someone is homeless, and then also that they're scary in some way. I wonder if we're afraid because one of the stereotypes that we've heard is that they're violent or that their behavior is unpredictable. Maybe the second one for you. Okay. So any other stereotypes that people have heard about people who are homeless? Yeah. Chronic mental illness.
I was going to say, sometimes you think they're lazy because you can't imagine yourself not having a job or a home that you've already got, and then for someone else to not have that, you think, well, they're lazy, they just don't go out and get it.
Right, so homeless people are lazy, they're not working hard enough, like I do.
One thing I've heard is that people will say, oh, they want to be homeless.
So there's another stereotype that people who are homeless are choosing that lifestyle. And what do we mean when we say choice? I think that's a really interesting one, because earlier it was mentioned chronic mental illness might be part of what's going on for a lot of people. And so maybe the choice is really just to avoid systems that are scary if you have an anxiety disorder, or if you're not treating a mental illness and you have a hard time organizing your thoughts. Being in a chaotic environment like Ali was talking about is really challenging. So is it a choice? Maybe. Over there and then again.
Lived downtown for 10 years. Distinction between transients and homeless.
Okay.
Or not necessarily even making that distinction.
So there's a stereotype about people who are homeless is that they're transient, meaning that they move around a lot. You know, maybe they're not from Missoula. That may be a stereotype that we have, that they're outsiders. Did you have more to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to make another comment about the mental illness piece, which trying to work within the mental health system can be really, really complicated and difficult. And I think that that can be a way that people fall out of that system and into homelessness.
Yes, I agree that navigating the services for treating mental illness can be very complicated and difficult, and you also have to have money to pay for it. So a lot of folks qualify for Medicaid or the mental health services payment system, but some people don't. And so I think that's an important piece of it too. So we've got a great list of stereotypes for the panelists to talk about. What did you find in your experiences that started to break down some of those stereotypes? Go ahead.
So in the class, we talked a lot about how we talk about homelessness being sin, sickness, or the system, where it's either people making bad choices and they end up in this horrible place because of their bad choices, or the system where just so much inequality, they end up falling through the cracks, or or sickness, where mental health issues or substance abuse disorders. And it's true, those things all contribute to homelessness, and we can categorize people's problems these ways. What came through when working with people is that we all have problems too. And as we go through our problems, we wouldn't necessarily categorize ourselves or condemn ourselves to certain stereotypes and ways of seeing ourselves based on our problems and the decisions that we have to make with them. So I think in working with people, we ended up seeing the true stories, the complexity of the choices that they have to make, and the complexity of the circumstances in their life. That it's never just simple enough to say they're an alcoholic, so they ended up being homeless. They made bad choices, so they ended up being homeless. When really it's a cascade of life events, some of their making and some not. But we've all have similar life experiences that just turn out different ways by luck, by our health circumstances. And I think that was really illuminating just to see the complexities of their stories.
Other panelists want to talk about stereotypes. Yeah.
Definitely. There are two causes of homelessness that I didn't really think about before the class. A big one was kids aging out of foster care, was something that I just hadn't considered. Having a kid doesn't have that family support, and maybe they're in 6 foster homes, and then they turn 18, and then it's, oh, okay, you're out in the world, you have to be an adult and make decisions, and you're responsible for them, when maybe they didn't have parents to teach them, this is how you fill out a resume. This is how you apply for jobs, or this is why school's important, or even just that financial support from families that I received, and a lot of people in my circumstance have received, to be able to go to college. And so serving, I want to say kids, people my age at the food pantry, and just seeing, wow, because I have parents and because I have the financial support, I'm in the situation that I'm in, and I could just as easily be in yours had I not had that financial support or that family support. And so I think for me, seeing that all of us make mistakes and bad decisions, but having that lack of a safety net or lack of family or friends, that those poor decisions or those mistakes end up having much more severe consequences, so that a kid who makes a mistake, who aged out of foster care, is now homeless, not able to get a job, as opposed, or maybe there's a mix-up with the law, or a mix-up with substance abuse, or something along those lines, and figuring out who you are, that then you're experiencing homelessness, as opposed to having your family say, oh, it's all right, you can get back on your feet, I'll help you out this time or the next time. And then seeing also felony convictions, how much harder that is to get a job. And so seeing some clients, one in particular that I got to know, who works so hard and works, 60 hours a week, and then comes and does his chore at the POV too. And so he's working, but he's still homeless, and not able to get housing. And so either having that felony conviction, you're unable to get housing, or you're unable to get a job, or you're not able to get a job because you don't have a house. Seeing that as well, where either people are really hardworking or would really like to work if they could just have the opportunity to get that job or to find housing. And so those, I could talk about this all day, but those two in particular were things that surprised me or broke my stereotypes.
I think a lot of the stereotypes about homelessness and even living in poverty is just the idea that I'm not like that person, I could never be in that situation, and it's just distancing ourselves from the possibility that, maybe one day we'll have a series of events that comes together at the wrong time, you can't make rent that month, you're evicted, and now you're homeless. And I think my experiences at the Poverello, and I think the stereotype of being from somewhere else or not being from Missoula, based on a lot of the research I've seen and that I've done, a lot of the homeless in Missoula are homegrown Missoula homeless individuals. And I think that thinking they're from somewhere else, or thinking that, they're chronically homeless, it's just, we want to distance ourselves from the idea that that could happen to me. And I think that volunteering at the Poverello and a lot of the work that I've done since then is a reminder that this person is not unlike myself. Having a conversation with them, or, looking at an intake form and seeing that, well, they were doing just fine, but then they had a medical emergency and something happened with their child, and so they missed too much work, and then they lost their job, and they weren't able to reach out to resources in time, and just a series of events that one thing piled on top of another, and they became homeless. And I think that housing instability and poverty are, we want to imagine that homelessness is, very far away, but they're really very closely linked. And, if we talk about the price of, the cost of housing and how much food costs month to month, and just thinking about, if you have to make the decision on whether I'm going to pay rent or whether I'm going to buy groceries for my family, that it becomes a reality. And when you realize that not only are people who are homeless, when you realize that their stories are, you know, not so unlike yours, like, oh, I was getting by just paycheck to paycheck, but then something happened. And, you know, you think about yourself, I'm getting by paycheck to paycheck. What if something goes wrong? So I think that fighting the stereotypes by recognizing that homeless individuals are people just like ourselves, that oftentimes things just got worse, too sudden for them to cope with.
Thanks. Any other panelists want to talk about stereotypes? Yeah.
So, I guess I don't have a really fancy segue into this, but in regards to stereotypes, sometimes, for me at least, I found it surprising just how far off some of those stereotypes can be. For example, Cassie can maybe correct my math here, but I believe over 50% of residents at the Poverello Center have jobs, about 50, which kind of like goes against the belief that that it's the sake of being lazy or wanting to be homeless. As well as with violence, people who are experiencing homelessness are not only more likely to be victims of violence than the general population, but they're also, I was sitting here thinking about it, but I don't even remember what the other point I was going to make about that was. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks. I think you make great points. Do we have other questions from the audience for the panelists?
I volunteer at the Poverello, and
Thank you.
Yeah, it's wonderful. But then when I talk about it, sometimes I hear these weird things from people like, well, you know, they're whatever. They start talking about the stereotypes and stuff. And so I was wondering if anybody's like learned how to talk to people about homelessness more, and you know, like the information about 50% of the people there have jobs. Where is that like at, and how do you bring that information out to the public?
So the question is, you know, as a volunteer, you encounter those stereotypes when you're talking with people in the community, and suggestions about how to talk about those stereotypes with friends or family members, and also, you know, just how do you slip in that statistical information that might have an impact? Is that a summary? Okay.
Yeah, that's this is pretty much my job now, so I should get on it. You know, the idea of community outreach and education is pivotal to people understanding the issues that people experience when they're homeless. So we always look for ways, and sort of, you know, in some ways we wish the service learning class is something that we could offer every volunteer, right? Because most often people volunteer with us because they care, and because they want to make a difference, and because they want to engage in community discussions that they think are really important. Last year we had 867 volunteers at the POV. Thank you, right? I mean, we have an amazing community. And so obviously we can't have everyone doing that class. But the idea that we always want to be supportive as staff when a volunteer leaves, or anyone in the community calls us up and says, hey, this is what I'm, you know, hearing about. Is this true? Whatever. We're always there for people. First of all, we're open 24/7, obviously for client purposes, but we will always get you in contact with the person who has the answer, because we want our community to be informed about the issues. One thing that I've learned, does anyone know about NCBI, National Coalition Building Institute? They're outstanding. They're sort of like a prejudice reduction workshop. They do a lot of other things, but this is the one thing that I think of is when someone's cup is full, when they have complaints, when they have concerns, when they have fears, whatever it is that adds up to their stereotypes maybe of people, or their understanding of people who they think are different than themselves, it's very hard to get anything else in there because they're full up to here with their ideas and their feelings and their experiences. So it can be really tough, but the best way to engage in a discussion is to listen And sometimes that means listening to things that we think are hurtful or we think are incorrect or we know don't really add up to the experiences or the evidence that we see in the community. But until we listen to each other and, until we're there to support each other in those experiences, even if they're not founded on, evidence or things like that, we aren't going to be able to really come to the table and change anything. So, as administrators, we get phone calls every day from someone who's upset about something. Every nonprofit probably has that. And the first thing we have to say is, thanks for calling. I'm glad you're voicing your concern. Let's talk about it. And we listen to them and we try to give them options that are based on the evidence that we see in the shelter. And we don't need to try to change their mind necessarily, which can be really tough. We just need to be there to say, hey, we're a community service. And you can say this as an individual community member. I want to be a community member. I want to listen to you. And then I'm going to ask that you respectfully listen to me. And then hopefully we'll have a conversation versus, a preaching kind of experience, which can be really tough. So I'd say, first, we have to change our mindsets of, hey, I've got to listen, which is a thing I've really learned from the Poverello Center and from my coworkers. You can't lead until you listen, and that can be really difficult. It's a big challenge and a big lesson.
One thing that I learned in the service learning class, one of the first things that I learned, was a simple little language trick that can help to reframe the issue. It's called people first language. So rather than calling people who live at the Poverello Center homeless people, call them people experiencing homelessness. Because if you say homeless people, homeless becomes their identity. But if you say people first, their identity is as a person first. And that's just a simple little language trick that really helps to, at least in my mind, really reframe a lot of the stereotypes for me. Because if I think of homeless people, I think of drunk people who are aggressively panhandling or something like that. But when you say people experiencing homelessness, you really think of the person that you're talking about before you think of that part of their identity.
And I'd just like to add to that, because I think that's really important. When you say people experiencing homelessness, then it's an occurrence in your life. It's not a permanent status. And it also helps us to reiterate that it's a temporary thing. A lot of the people that stay with us, I think it's over 70%, stay with us for 30 days or less. They're homeless for 30 days or less. And earlier someone pointed out that chronic homelessness, which is a defined thing that's really complicated, but just that you're like homeless often or for long periods of time, that's only 10% of the people that we serve. So earlier we were talking about observing people on the street and identifying people who are homeless based on their appearance. You might be noticing that 10% of people who are chronically homeless. They're aged more quickly. They don't have the same resources, so they're not dressed the same as we are, those kinds of things. But I bet you've passed a lot of other clients of ours on the street and not even noticed them. They didn't look any different than you, because they are headed to work, or they are headed to the office to go find out about supports that are available to them. So, yeah, people first language is great. Thanks, Allie. Other questions from the, yeah.
So, the new Poverello Center.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I lived downtown, like I said, for 10 years, and I lived very close to the current Poverello Center. And so I've seen, and I firsthand, the arguments for shifting out of that location. But I've also just moved into the neighborhood. Literally, I live in the Clark Fork Commons, so I'm literally like 2 blocks from there. And I'm stoked about it. I think it's a really beautiful facility. And so my question is twofold. One, what would you say to community members who, unlike myself, are concerned about their property value, right? And two, what are you most excited about with the new Poverello Center?
Well, since it's a question for panelists, anybody want to take that on? What are you excited about? Allie should be able to talk about that.
I can say what I'm excited about. The old facility was great. I mean, we housed people and we got the job done. And it also was not designed as a homeless shelter. So that was a problem. Trying to find enough space for 100+ people a night during the winter was a problem. Just how the building it's old and it's run down, and that was a problem. And with the new facility, there will be more space, and it will be newer, and it'll just be, I mean, this new facility is designed as a homeless shelter, and not repurposed like the old one was. And I think that it's really important to have a facility that it will be able to provide services in a much more dignified way. Not that the Poverello Center doesn't already do a great job of that, but just with the nicer, more updated, more space, it will be able to provide those services in a way more dignified way.
Yeah, like right now in our current facility, the toilets get clogged up sometimes, the electricity doesn't work in parts of the building. I mean, it's run down, it's falling apart around us. The new facility is just going to make it, we don't have to worry about those kinds of things anymore.
And about maybe 30 or 40 people sleep on the dining room floor.
Yeah. Is there another question? Did you have, yeah.
Sorry, I forgot your name, but earlier you mentioned you did a research project with LGBT youth, and I was just curious to know what your thesis was and what you ended up finding out of that research project.
Yeah. So for my undergraduate thesis, after I took the service learning class, I decided to do a qualitative research project on LGBT, which is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, plus youth and homelessness. And I only did 10 interviews because it's a qualitative project. But what I found, one of the biggest problems facing LGBT youth is coming out and dealing with that acceptance for family. But in my project, I found that coming out was a very small part of that. So as we were all discussing earlier, that is a huge series of events. So it's not only being someone who feels unwelcome in your family, but it's that, and then it's another thing. It's your parents are doing alcohol and drugs, and you don't feel welcome because you're LGBT. And that was a very small project in terms of, other kinds of research. People are now beginning to ask this question more often. And the True Colors Fund, which is specifically focused on LGBT youth homelessness, is getting more information out there. And I read a research article recently about how homelessness for LGBT youth specifically, is actually increasing as marriage equality spreads throughout the United States, which is counterintuitive, but it's this false sense of security that as marriage equality becomes more accepted, you will be more accepted, and sometimes that's not always the case. So.
Other questions for our panel? Yeah, Heather.
So how do you plan to use the inequality and social justice option in your sociology degree in the medical field?
Can you repeat the question too?
So how do I plan to use what I've learned through my sociology major and the service learning course as a physician? So for me, my plan is to work in a underserved area, in a low-income area. And so currently serving as a VISTA, which is a program of AmeriCorps that focuses on poverty reduction. So I see myself as a leader in my community and partnering with other organizations that health is a huge part of the consequences of poverty. And so serving that on the front lines as an individual practitioner, and then also working to reduce things on a system level. So you're not just putting a Band-Aid on it, but that you're helping to reduce, property values or bridge those resources. Something that I'm really excited for Missoula Food Bank is we're doing Missoula Food Security Initiative, which is going to be a collaboration of resources from schools to banks to social services to talk about ways that maybe we haven't thought of to reduce hunger and better connect our resources. And so seeing that collaboration model and learning from that and then using that for the future, I think that they should go more hand in hand, medicine and underserved areas. And a really cool example in the U.S. is Maria Chilton started this program called Witnesses for Hunger. So she's a physician in Philadelphia, and it's this project where she said, I'm advocating in Congress for rights of these people because their voices are not being heard on a political level, but it wasn't getting through. So having her patients who are experiencing food insecurity take pictures and have that be a powerful message, and having them, bringing them to Congress to talk about their experiences. So having that position of power. For health and food insecurity, Place at the Table, just going to pitch that. Place at the Table is a really great documentary that expands on that.
Can I go back to the question about real estate real quick? I don't think that was addressed yet. So I just want to point to everyone some literature that we brought today. Thanks, guys. This is the first issue of a community outreach newsletter that we're going to be doing quarterly now that we're moving into the new shelter. And the main reason that we're doing that is because we want to be there for our new neighbors. And that means listening to the complaints or listening to the kudos or listening to the ideas of collaboration or whatever it is. We're not coming in as this monolithic structure, this island or something like that. We understand that we're going to be inevitably affecting our neighborhood because we're a new service that's in the neighborhood. It didn't matter if it's us or another nonprofit or another facility in general. So this is really trying to open up those communication lines to say to people, okay, these are your priorities as our neighbors. All right, we're going to take that into account with our programming and our management decisions. Because really, it's not the presence of a homeless shelter necessarily that it's going to affect our neighbors. It's how we manage it, which means managing our relationships and managing our programs and managing in communication with our clients. And so, we're going to be changing some programmatic concepts as we move into the new shelter in order to be a good neighbor. So that's what we'd like to let people know as we make our move. And please, I have some extra here. Some people came in late. Please take these. They're kind of a who we are, what we are, ABC kind of a thing. Yeah. Sure. So as of right now, we are doing door knocking, kind of the old school style, which is really nice to. And what's so lovely about having almost 1,000 volunteers is we've got some man and woman power behind us. So we're having people go around, knock on doors, say, hi, I'm a volunteer. I just want to let you know that we're here for you. Distributing a bunch at businesses. We're going to distribute a bunch at the schools. We're going to send an email format to all of the neighborhood leadership committee kind of things. And like I said, this will be quarterly, so we're really going to try to update people. And as we start getting information from our community, we're going to respond in so that people know that it's a conversation. It's two ways. Yeah, thanks. Well, construction, so it just depends. But we're hoping to have our grand opening in mid-December, right for the holiday season. So it's going to be really exciting, and we'll let everyone know about that when we make the date. Yeah.
Yeah, we're hurrying as quickly as we can because we know the weather's getting colder and people are in need of our support. Other questions for the panel? Yes. What's going to happen to the old building? It's actually already under contract, so we have a buyer, and we can't really talk more about that because we haven't handed over the keys yet. But yeah, it'll be sold.
Going back, so I think all of us studied sociology, right? Okay. So I think that the model for the Poverello class is the best model for service learning, where you're able to have that service and it's required and it's integral with what you're learning, and you're able to discuss it. But I think that all classes that require service in the community are really valuable. I think it's a really valuable model because it makes the most sense for sociology majors to take this course. But I think that for any major to serve, and whether they go into social services or they're volunteering or they're contributing money to the organization, that I think that it's, like Cassie was hitting on, it's an issue not just for those in the social services but for the whole community, that just better understanding who your neighbors are and where they're coming from is important, whether you're actually continuing to serve in that organization or just thinking about things differently. So I think that service is wonderful in that respect.
And just to make a plug for the class, we've already selected the spring semester cohort for this class, but it is offered every spring, and we encourage anyone from any discipline who's interested in the topic or wanting to engage in the class to apply. We have an application process, so get a hold of Daisy Rooks in the sociology department if you're interested. And also, the Poverello Center loves students, all kinds of students. If you have an internship you're interested in doing, if you just want to volunteer, if you have a project in mind that you're curious about whether we can support that, get in touch with either myself, Tessa Hierman, or Cassie, or our volunteer manager. All of that information is available on our website, thepoverellocenter.org. We love students. They're very helpful to us. They're fresh eyes in our organization. They help us see what we do and help us to improve what we do. Any other questions? Who knows what time it is? Thank you. Other questions for the panel? Yeah.
You said that we can apply. What are like the qualifiers for the program, or what type of?
There really aren't any qualifiers for the program. It's a sociology research class, so we want to be sure that you're going to feel comfortable in a sociology research class, maybe having a foundational research class already in place. But I don't think there's really any sort of set standard that we're looking for. It's just an opportunity for us to have conversations with the students because it is a smaller class. It's a class that has some obviously pretty significant expectations, you know, and we want to just kind of have conversations before students are signing up for something that maybe they don't know what they're signing up for.
Oh, and this, so we're all sociology majors, but not just sociology majors are in the class. Last year we had community health major, communications, social work, and then sociology. Yes.
Yeah, this year we have an environmental studies student. So yeah, all kinds of folks that are interested in how homelessness impacts their community. Other questions? Well, I would like the panelists to talk about what did you enjoy most about your service learning class experience?
Go down the line or just start?
Whoever wants to start.
Do you want to start?
Well, having moved on from that experience and still working in the field as a case manager for a transitional housing program for chemical dependency for people who were experiencing homelessness or mental health concerns. One of the things that I really enjoy right now is seeing people who I did my service learning on the homeless outreach team, so I was walking around in the community, visiting transient camps, visiting people who were on the street, and now continuing to work in the field, seeing people from then who are actually moved on and in permanent housing and doing well. I really have a lot of hope for a lot of people. So that's what I've enjoyed most now.
I think more than enjoying the class, that I grew a lot through it, and so I wouldn't say that class was the one word to describe it was enjoyable, but I think that a benefit of having a service learning course is, as opposed to just volunteering on your own time, is there are probably some points that I would have stopped volunteering because it was so emotionally draining for me to hear stories and to realize how close my experience could be to theirs, or that, you know, just, one bad experience away from being in their situation. And so being able to be in that scenario to talk about what we were experiencing, field notes, so you're writing down everything that you're observing, as well as what you're feeling as well. And so I think that that was, or I mean, not necessarily everything you're feeling, but talking about how you're reacting to those situations was very helpful. And I think the staff there was something that was really enjoyable to see how great they are at their job, of being a volunteer and having some responsibility, but seeing the staff members and just what finesse they have with being able to talk to a client who's, you know, experienced a lot and maybe is really angry, and they're able to approach it with this patience and understanding, and be able to talk in a quiet tone with what's that technique called?
De-escalation?
De-escalation. And so that that the client is able to really talk about what they want to talk about, as opposed to having a yelling match and having both people walk away angry. That seeing those techniques and seeing how great they are at their job, and having connections with people. I think that through the interviews of getting to hear people's stories on a level that you wouldn't necessarily be able to hear just talking with them maybe in the office or serving dinner, that just being amazed by the level of detail that people were willing to share in that and what they've been through. So there were definitely enjoyable experiences. I just think more than that I grew. So.
For me, the most enjoyable part of the class and volunteering at the POV was the ability to kind of debrief and reflect upon my volunteering. It's one thing to go in and volunteer for an hour and then go home and not think about it until you go back again. But through writing field notes, painstakingly writing field notes, and being able to talk to other people in the class about my experiences and being like, you know, wow, I had this light bulb come on today, or, you know, I really had this awesome experience today. Or, you know, the opposite side of that, like, oh, I kind of had a tough experience today, you know, and talk about it and talk about, you know, why that happened and what that means to me. That was, I can't say how valuable that was to me, being able to have that experience to reflect on my volunteer time.
You guys took all the good points. I think that the most enjoyable thing for me was building relationships, and that was not just building relationships with the clients, but it was also building relationships with the people in my class. We did a lot of debriefing, and we did NCBI trainings, so we were able to just be open and be real with each other. And that was really important, because there's a lot of hard stuff that happens at the POV, and there's a lot of hard stuff that you see. But being able to talk about it and have a support system through your class, that was really awesome, as well as building relationships with the clients. I built some relationships during the class, and I continued with that when I continued to work at the POV. And those relationships, although I'm not like best friends with anybody that I met at the Poverello Center, those relationships have been meaningful to me in a bunch of different ways. So I think that that was the most enjoyable experience for me.
The best part about the class, about the service portion of the class, was being thanked. It would happen multiple times every time I volunteered, and I didn't really notice it at first, but after a while, when it would happen every few minutes, every single time, I realized that I've been at my current place of paid employment for almost 3 years, and I've never been thanked for it. So.
I think what I enjoyed most about it is sort of a selfish thing, is empowerment. Because if you have an approach to life where you want to change things for the better, or you're 15, you say, I want to change the world, kind of a thing. That's a good thing, right? But then you realize that it's really hard to push a boulder up a hill. And maybe you can't do it as easily as you hoped you could on your own. And so when I moved to Missoula originally, I saw a lot of homeless people on the streets, people experiencing homelessness on the streets. And I wanted to do something about it, but I didn't know what. I didn't know if I should give them $1. I didn't know if I should volunteer. I didn't know what to do. So this class is an outstanding avenue to learn about the bigger picture and to take little chips away, right? So when you have 867 volunteers and 30 staff members and amazing community members who are partners on many levels, you can push the boulder up the hill and it gets to the other side. So it was sort of this gateway for me to understand, okay, I've always wanted to make change. This is how it's done. It's not as pretty or glorious as I thought it was going to be, but there are avenues to do it if you're willing to put in the time and training and be patient with yourself, because it is not easy work, whether you volunteer 1 hour once a month or whether you're a full-time employee. It takes a lot to push against the current of all the experiences that people have that we feel like we can't change easily. And so the class really showed me a way professionally.
Thank you. Time? So this is about our time to, how much time do we have? I think what I would like to do, I mean, since it seemed, does anybody have any last questions? Okay, so I think this is fun, but maybe you guys won't think it's fun. If there was one word that you could use to summarize the service learning class, what would it be?
I'm going to cheat right off the bat and use 2 words: worth it.
Worth it, okay.
I would say that one word that really describes my experience at taking the service learning class is meaningful.
Meaningful.
Really meaningful.
Thank you.
I'm going to go with Beyonce and say irreplaceable.
Irreplaceable.
I would say depth.
Depth.
Or, yeah. I'll go with that. And I'll cheat to end it and use the word Cassie used for empowering.
Empowering. Cassie, you want to pitch one in there?
I suppose advocacy, because as this panel's entitled, it's really what's so beautiful about the service learning class is that we can invest in people to really hopefully create advocates by the time that they're done with the class, which is what we'd like to do for everyone. So it's a nice starting place.
Excellent. Well, I would like to thank you all for participating in our discussion today, and I would also like to thank the panelists for taking time to be with us today. If you have questions, let us know, and don't forget our materials here at the front that you can take. Thanks, everyone.